Hey everyone, welcome to the audio booth in my video production trailer. I wanted to share with you guys the newest addition to the trailer, and that is this Yamaha TF3 mixer. This is one that I had actually picked out 2 years ago. It just wasn't in the budget for me to get it right away, and so it became kind of a later addition. But as you can see, it actually fits really well. That's because the audio booth for the trailer was specifically designed around this mixer. So when I got it, I knew it was going to fit. Everything was going to work well together in this particular configuration. As I was prepping to buy this mixer, I watched every YouTube video that there was on the thing. I read all the reviews that were available online. I read the product manual multiple times in order to become familiar with it. But yet, when I actually got my hands on it and was able to play with it for more than a few minutes, there's some things that I learned about it that weren't entirely clear from all the stuff that I had read and seen. So this video is really focused on that. If you're looking for a high level or a low level, like go through all the different aspects of the mixer, I recommend the videos that Yamaha themselves have done. They go into much more detail than some of the other videos from, say, for example, some of the retailers that sell the product. So just where does the product fit? So this mixer is kind of, you can tell from the very beginning that Yamaha was designing this mixer as sort of a balance between something that's really easy to use and something that professionals would be comfortable with and not feeling limited by. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that, to be honest. So the mixer has a lot of features that make it easy for first-timers to use. So it has, for example, a lot of presets for different types of microphones and different sources that you might be mixing. It's got presets for like male vocal, female vocal, presets for trumpets, and all sorts of other stuff. So you can build a mix pretty quickly without having to really understand how to do that using the more conventional, more hands-on sorts of controls. But at the same time, all those controls are actually there, so a professional can really get in and do the things that they need to do. At the same time, there's some things that are missing from this that you find on some higher-end models, and that's to be expected. You know, every product has to have the right balance between features and price. And I think actually Yamaha's done a pretty good job on this. So just so you guys know, I have a background in audio that goes back 30 years. I started playing with audio as a teenager, and I got pretty into it through the 90s and into the 2000s. And I've got more years doing audio than I have doing video. So even though this is a video-related channel, my experience with audio actually runs a little bit deeper than it does with video. So hopefully that gives you a little more confidence in any of the opinions that I happen to share here. So, okay, there are actually four mixer products in this product line. There's the TF3. There's also a TF5, a TF1, and then what they call the TF rack. The TF3 and the TF5 basically have the same processing capabilities. The TF1 and the TF rack scale those back a little bit, fewer channels that they can process at a time. So the TF3, the TF5, they can mix 48 channels of audio at a time, whereas the TF1 and TF rack are limited to 40 channels at a time. The other difference between the 3 and the 5 is other difference is, plural, number of faders and the number of hardware inputs on the back. So the TF3 has 24 of each, whereas the TF5 has 32 of each. As mentioned, though, they have the same processing capability. So if you are able to feed in additional channels that you need through either USB or an external source like Dante, this mixer, even though it's a little smaller than TS5, can actually it actually has all the same processing capabilities. So as long as you're willing to jump between banks on the faders, the TF3 has all the same power as the TF5. So let's actually just kind of take a little bit of a rundown here on what's going on. So as mentioned, there are 24 faders, motorized faders, 100 millimeter faders on the TF3 here. The motors on them, but they're pretty standard compared to what other ones that I've used. They're not super noisy. They're not super quiet. They're not totally quiet either. They're not the fastest, but they're also not the slowest. So they kind of fall in the mid-range of the different ones that I've used in the past. Above each of the faders, you find a color strip, which you are able to pick your own color. So I've come up with my own color scheme that I like for the way I happen to build mixes, but you can assign that any way you want. The colors themselves don't necessarily mean anything. Above that's a little display here, and there's several things that are shown on here. So the top line shows you the hardware source where the audio is coming from. In this case, in this channel, it says I09, which means it's input 09 on the back. And then just below that, you have a user configurable name for each particular channel. So in this case, it says P9, which stands for Patch Bay 9, Channel 9, SDI1, which basically means in the case of my trailer here, that's coming from an SDI video source channel 1. And then below that, you actually have the channel number. So it says CH9, which basically means this is channel 9 for the mixer. So above that, we have an on button, which is basically the opposite of a mute button. So if you want a channel to be on, you hit the button. If you want it off, you hit the button again and turn it off. Above that, there's a three segment LED level meter. So it has indicators for -40, -20 dB, and then a peak button. I wish there were more, to be honest, but you can at least see a little bit what's going on. Then you have your Q button, which to a lot of people is going to be better known as a solo button. So you're able to solo particular sources and listen to them isolated from everything else. And then a select button, which is basically how you are able to control all the other aspects of that particular channel through the touchscreen interface. Above the main faders, there are two additional stereo in pairs. The first one comes from either USB or a connected iOS device, an iPad or iPhone. And then the second one comes from inputs on the back or from USB or from Dante. Even though it's smaller, it still has the same control. So instead of a fader, it has a knob, but it still has the same on button, level meters, Q button, and then a select button there as well. In terms of processing capability, though, there are some differences here. So channels 1 through 24, and then channels additionally is 25 through 32, all have the same processing capabilities on this mixer. So you have a 5-band parametric equalizer, you have a gate, you have a compressor. Channels 33 through 40, and then the stereo channels eliminate the compressor and gate. So you basically just have equalization on those. So just a little bit less processing available on those upper channels. So you notice that I mentioned earlier this mixer has 48 channels of mixing. Well, that's 40 input sources plus 2 stereo pairs plus 2 effects returns, 2 stereo effects returns, and that gives you your total of 48. So that's where that comes from. All right, the other thing you can do with the faders here is they have what you call send-on faders, and this is becoming fairly common, but you press a button on the right side of the mixer there, and then your faders become your effect send levels, so, your aux send levels. So if you're building a mix for a stage monitor, and you've got that on aux 1, you hit the aux 1 button, and you adjust your faders, and then you've got your aux 1 mix, and then you can switch over to aux 2 for your cry room, or however you want to do that. And you can also switch between your different banks. And the faders will move accordingly, so you've got that available there. You press the same button again to exit send on fader mode, and then you're back to controlling your stereo mix once again. There's also some other interesting things here. So when you're in this mode, you can actually unassign a channel from a particular aux send and basically mute it, which is something that I hadn't seen done in this particular for this type of functionality before. So you can do that there as well. In addition to the aux sends is where you also have your effects bus. It has 2 dedicated effects bus built in. By default, they're assigned as reverb and delay, but you can actually reassign those to your own effects that you, as desired. So if I actually come in here on the channel that I'm currently talking on, and I turn that up, you should hear some reverb on my voice. And I can turn that down. Or I can go to the second effects, and then that will go to an echo or a delay. Again, those are reassignable, however, to any of the different effects that you want. I'll talk a little bit more about effects when I get a little deeper into some of the menus, because there's some other things that are going on there that are a little different than other mixers that I've used in the past. But as you're building a mix, you adjust your levels. Come up here, you hit select button, and then from here, you hit the home screen, and you kind of get an overview of some of the aspects of the different channels. So you've got your input gain, both an analog gain and a digital gain that follows it. You've got equalizer, your gate, your compressor, your effects levels, and your aux send levels, and then your assign. So whether you're assigned to the stereo bus, the subwoofer bus, any DCAs as well. Again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you want to control any of those particular parameters, you double tap on it. So I'm actually going to pull up the channel that I'm currently talking on, channel 7 here. And the first screen, it's where you control the input. So they've got this little display here. It's kind of unusual. I don't think anybody else is doing this, but it gives you this little graph, and then you can basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to achieve green in the middle for a nice healthy input. So it's not too low, it's not too high, it's just right. It's a Goldilocks level, right? So very easily you can see how your input gain is set, whether you've got it in the right range or not. You can also assign which of various inputs that particular channel comes from. Now, one of the things that higher-end professional mixers do is let you assign any input to any channel on the mixer. This one does not do that. Channel 7, for example, is always going to be assigned to channel 7 of one of the different input banks. So you've got your hardware inputs on the back. So there's a combination XLR, TRS. And then you can also come from USB, which is basically a computer source. So if you have a DAW that you want to play from, and then you have slot, which in the case of these, currently the only expansion card that they have is for Dante, but that would allow you to pick Dante channel 7 as the source for channel 7. So the downside to doing it this way is you can't, for example, take input number 7 and assign it to channel 3 on the mixer. That's one thing that Yamaha does not allow at this level of product, where you have to go into a little higher end. The other things you can do here, you can turn on phantom power, 48 volt phantom power, and then you can invert the phase of that particular channel there as well. There's also a digital gain over here, so if you want to do additional gain or reduction on top of the input stage, you can do that there as well. So you have some control over level in addition to that initial preamp. Speaking of the preamps, I think they actually sound really, really good. They pulled the same preamps that they have from some of their studio captured recording interface devices, audio interfaces devices, and I think it sounds pretty good. I noticed an immediate upgrade in sound quality when I put this mixer in compared to the one that I used to have in here. All right, coming down a little bit more, that's where we have a place for equalization, gate, compressor. I want to show you guys a couple of things that they're doing here that's unique. So again, this is sort of that balance between having power and making it easy to use. So you can either go into like a standard mode where you can control each of the 5 bands of equalization manually. They're parametric, so you can control the frequency, the width, and then the level of gain. Or you can turn on this one knob mode, and they've got 2 different settings for it. And for this channel that I'm currently on, they've got one's called intensity, which basically affects the overall gain of all the channels all at once. Or there's a mode that's called vocal, and as you do this, turn this knob that's here, you're basically allowing the mixer to choose a combination of settings on the equalizer that will give a pleasing sound for a vocal. So I've got that dialed in right now, basically at 50%. So the quality of the voice that you're hearing from me right now is going through this one knob equalization. Similarly, they also have one knob capability on the compressor, and again, I've got that turned on. I've got that set at 40% instead of 50 like I had on the other. But it's applying a compressor on my voice, and it's basically they've pre-selected the different parameters. So the combination of your threshold, your ratio, attack, response, or release, and then the output gain. It automatically adjusts all those in combination. Oh, along with the knee as well. It adjusts all those combinations. So as you crank the knob, it adjusts those parameters together to give a more noticeable level of effect. So that's a pretty cool feature for anybody who doesn't necessarily understand how to adjust those parameters individually. Coming down below that, we actually have the 2 dedicated effects processors, and then below that we have the aux send levels. Now each of those aux sends, you can control level and whether it's pre or post fader. So if you wanted to, if you're building a monitor mix and you want that to be pre-fader, you can set that there. Or if you're building a mix for a cry room where you want the master stereo levels to be used, you can turn the pre off in order, and then the master fader for each channel will control the levels there. All right, so that's kind of the gist of it. There's other things going on here. So there's a little menu button where I can't see anything here, but So you can basically copy one channel to another, or zero out all the different parameters on the page that you happen to be on. Just some cool functionality there. All right. And one thing I actually really like about this mixer is the user-defined knobs, and then these user-defined keys that are up here. By default, these are actually assigned to control input gain, equalizer level, compressor level, and then I forget what the fourth one was, but I reassigned my fourth one to be my monitor level, so I can control the level of the audio coming to my studio monitors here. So whenever I need to adjust the level, I just reach up for that particular knob. Now the buttons up here are initially assigned to recall presets, the first 6 presets, and I reassigned 2 of those buttons to control the USB audio recording functionality. So the mixer can actually record directly to a USB thumbstick. That's actually what you're hearing right now. Audio going to this USB thumbstick. And in order for me to record to that, I just hit the E button on the panel there, and it goes. A couple other interesting buttons up here. There's a button to mute input channels, all input channels, and then a button to mute just the effects. So if you're doing sound for a concert and the artist wants to talk between acts, you can hit the effects mute, and then all the reverb, delay, whatever is muted, so you're not having to hear that while they're talking. Down below that, we have dedicated sections for the effects. So if I want to edit the parameters for FX1 or FX2, I can just hit the button there. There's also a Q button there, and then an on-off button to turn the individual effects on or off, as well as a level control there as well. And down below, we have the buttons to control which different fader banks you happen to be using. There's 3 buttons, but you can control 5 different banks. You got input 1, which is channels 1 through 24, input 2, which is channels 25 through 40, plus your stereo inputs, and then your effects returns. And then you have an output bank, which has all of your auxiliary sends, all 20 of them, as well as your monitor level, a subwoofer level, the level of different matrix outputs. And then by pressing combinations of buttons, you have a group view. I'll show more in a second. And then you have a custom view. And the custom view allows you to assign any combination of inputs and outputs to a particular bank. So if you know you're only using channels 1 through 5, and then you want to have the rest be assigned to outputs, you can do that. Another cool use of that is when you have stereo assigned pairs, you only have to pick one of the 2 channels, so you're not taking up 2 faders for one source. But let's go back to the group here, because Yamaha's done something that's kind of unique. They call this the DCA rollout. For those not familiar with the concept of a DCA, basically you assign a group of channels to a DCA, and then you have one fader that controls the master level for all those channels. A good example of that would be if you're doing sound and you've got a drum kit. You got, say, 8 mics on a drum kit. You want to be able to control all the drums at once with a single fader. You can assign those to a DCA, and then as you adjust that DCA, the level of those 8 channels is controlled after the individual channels. So what they have here is what they call DCA rollout. So as I select the different DCAs here, the level, or the channels that are assigned to that DCA actually appear on the left side of the mixer here. So as I'm looking at DCA 2, I see channels 3, 4, 5, 6, 13, and 14. And I come over here to DCA 1, and now it's showing me channels 1, 2, 9, and 10. So very cool feature there. I really like that quite a bit. So, and then again, we have the custom one there as well. So there is a tap tempo button here on the lower right. You've probably seen that blinking there the whole time. So if you want to have the effects synchronized to the beat of the music that happens to be going on, you can tap the tempo in there, and that will automatically adjust any effects that you've tied. There's a sync button you can set inside of the effects parameters, which basically ties it to the tap tempo. The other thing that Yamaha's done is they've made this mixer controllable from iOS devices and from computers. So as I wake up the iPad here, it will connect. And I have the iPad app has, I would say, about 75% of the functionality of the mixer itself. There's a number of things that are not controllable from there, but there's enough there that you can actually walk around and build a mix. The things that are not included in that would be like some of the hardware assignments for channels and things like that. Those are not included there. If you want something that's a little more powerful and you still want to be able to control the mixer remotely, you can go to their the TF Editor app, and that's available for both Windows and Mac. That one has about 95% of the functionality of the mixer itself. So again, only a handful of very specific features are not available there. The one thing that's really missing from both those two apps that I think would be handy is the real-time analyzer. So, for example, if I go into look at the channel that I'm talking on, as I tap on the screen here, there's a real-time analyzer for that particular channel. So as I'm trying to equalize, I can see if there's any particular channel or any particular frequency that are standing out, and then do something to kind of compensate for that. And that's available both on individual channels as well as the outputs as well, so you can see what's going on there. The iPad app does have an RTA functionality, but it's only using the local microphone. It does not use the audio that's on the channel that you're currently selecting, so a little bit less functional there. And then the app on the PC and Mac does not have the RTA feature whatsoever. So, in terms of what I think of this, I really like the sound quality of this. I think it sounds fantastic, especially compared to the other mixers that I've been using as of late. I think Yamaha's done a good job on the sound quality there. They've also done a really good job on making this usable for someone who's never used a mixer before, between the ability to have presets and being able to lock out certain parameters. You can actually create user accounts on this mixer and then allow different people different levels of access to different parameters that are available on the mixer. So if you've got a situation where you have volunteers that are not really familiar with creating audio mixes, you can lock them out of anything but the actual levels of each individual channel if you want. You've got pretty good control there. I think that's pretty cool functionality there. A couple things that I would have liked to have seen in this mixer. First of all, would have been nice to be able to reassign channels. So again, channel 7 or input 7 on the back, go to channel 3 on the mixer. That would have been nice. That's something I actually have used a fair amount in the past with some of the other mixers that I've used. But I understand why they left that off. And the other one is I would have liked to have seen delays on individual channels. There is a workaround for that, and that's by using the aux sends. So the stereo aux 10s, which are numbered 9 through 20, actually have their own, each stereo pair has its own effects block, and you can assign any of the available effects you want to it and control the parameters. So what I've done is I've assigned 19 and 20 to be what I call a video delay, which delays the audio by basically the same amount of time that it takes to sync up video with audio. So like every video camera has some sort of delay to it, and it's because this is I'm using this in a video in a production environment. I need to be able to delay audio signals so that they synchronize up with the video that's coming into the trailer. And so what I do on those channels is I basically send them to aux sends 19 and 20, and then 19 and 20 have a 2-frame video delay. And it actually does let you put it in here in frames, not just milliseconds or feet or meters. You can actually do it by frames as well. And then I use the delay on aux 19 and 20 in order to have that audio sync up with what's coming in video-wise. So I also have a couple of aux sends that are set to a multi-band compressor. So if I wanted to add that functionality, do that functionality within the mixer itself, I can. It's only 3-band, but it's better than nothing. And then I also have one that's set to a subtle pitch shift to kind of thicken vocals a little bit. So anytime I need to do that, I can assign that to that aux send as well. So anyway, that's kind of my Yamaha TF series mixer at a high level. If you guys have any questions about any of this, please ask me in the comment section down below. I'll try and answer that as best I can and as quickly as I can. If you have something that's not of general interest and you need to ask me about, you can get to me through my website. My website is djprod.biz. You can click on the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page, or you can go directly to that page by going to djp.li/contact in your browser. So if you guys are interested at all in video production related topics, I realize a lot of people watching this video would be coming here specifically because it talks about this particular mixer. You can subscribe to the channel. I produce videos that have to do with video production about once a week. This channel's been going for about 2.5 years now, and I have been able to average about 1 video per week. So anyway, thanks guys for watching, and have a fantastic day.